This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, and welcome to an afternoon edition of the Empress of Biz, Listen, Learn, Prosper. And I get to talk to the most fascinating people in the world, entrepreneurs, small business people, and they are the heartbeat of America. They're making things happen, regardless of what's going on in the rest of the world. These guys and gals make things happen in our nation. And I have two exciting people with me. And of course, my co-host Sal Acosta, who is a business broker and is going to give his own advertisement. But this is so exciting to me. I have the owner of Klavon on the Klavon Ice Cream Parlor. Any of you are from Pittsburgh or have traveled to Pittsburgh, this is a destination spot. And while he is a multiple business owner, there is part of me that's saying, I have the owner of Klavon Ice Cream Parlor here. Uh, Good afternoon, Jacob Hanchar. I am so delighted to have you. Good afternoon, Sal, but you're taking second fiddle to the ice cream store, I got to tell you.
That's fair enough.
Yeah. Welcome, Jacob. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You have an interesting background from family owned businesses to a digital owned business to the ice cream store. But I got to start with Clavon's.
Sure.
So, and I've been there. The ice cream is great. I've been there many times. I've just never met you. Tell me, how'd you get involved? Tell us what Klavon is. Well, I'm bubbling. You give the official.
Yeah, sure. So I tell people I usually blame my wife. So she was interested in getting a kid-related business. This just when she was pregnant with her third child, and she was afraid she's going to be a stay-at-home mom and be bored. Well, now we have five children and another one on the way, so she's not, she's the opposite of bored. So what had eventually happened is it fell upon me. So just going back a little bit of history, she was interested in buying a, maternity shop or something like that. And I said, okay, honey, fine, we can do that. But I need to look at the 1040s and all the finances behind these businesses. And so when I saw these businesses, they were horrific. I mean, they were hemorrhaging cash like you wouldn't believe. There was a theme though. The landlords were all getting rich. So what I told her is I said, look, if a building comes up for sale and it includes the business, then fine. I'll be more than happy to buy that business. But these ones, we can't buy any of these businesses. So as soon as I said that, Klavon's came up for sale.
Ah,
So Ray Klavon passed away in 2013, that February. And then his family tried to operate it, but they stopped on Mother's Day in May of 2013. We bought it in June of 2013 and then reopened in July 2013. And we've been open ever since. So that's the
well,
short,
Jacob, let me
brief
ask you
history.
a
I can
question.
go on forever about the.
Backtrack.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to ask you a question, backtrack a little bit to
Yeah.
what you said when you were looking at businesses in general, because I think this might be interesting to people that are out there thinking of buying a business. And what you discovered is that, like you said, the landlord was getting rich and maybe the retailer was struggling a little bit. Is that also part because the retailer, on the other hand, is getting squeezed on one hand by the landlord, but is maybe getting squeezed on the other hand by competition from Amazon and these famous online retailers, and they're kind of stuck in the middle? So is it like kind of coming from both sides?
Yes, and I also think there is a difference in certain people's mindsets. I think they're buying a business, but what they're really doing is buying a hobby. And there's a really great saying that a wise man once told me: revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is reality. And
mm,
if your business is not generating cash, I don't care how much you love it. And this is a saying by one of the Consol presidents from way back when. We're not in it for the romance. It's nice to have a business that gives you purpose and fills you with love, But the way I look at it is that you have a certain amount of money, and if that money shrinks, then you have less to give to your children or your heirs. So the business has to operate on a profit, and there has to be a great deal of rigor surrounding that. I see, and this gets in deeper, and I can pontificate forever on this point. I see most businesses that do not have a separation between ego and accomplishment. A lot of people own a business and they just insert themselves as their identity and they don't want to let it go, or they simply are driving the business forward even though it's not a profitable business because their ego's too much involved. Whereas sometimes you just have to make a very cold, rational decision. You need to be able to separate yourself from the business. So that's kind of what I try to do early on is say, look, there are practicalities to owning a business. And the first thing is we have to see that there's a market there. And you're right, Amazon and all these online retailers are squeezing everybody. But it's not just that. There's ice cream parlor, there's Dairy Queen, there's McDonald's, there's Wendy's, there's other pressures too from major chains. So the thing that I liked about Klavon's is that you can't replicate what we have, or at least not easily, right? It's from the 1920s, and that's an intangible that no one can replicate. So that gives us an advantage in the marketplace. And so it was a couple of those things combined with the property that I thought gave us a nice investment opportunity in buying that particular business.
And you are also, I should bring you into the classroom. I can just see it right now. um, and I sometimes fall in love with my businesses because I do, and you can always, and I've owned up to 6 at one time, which is a little insane. You have also, you own another business, Jacob. Would you please talk about Digital Dream Labs?
Sure. So that started off as an investment, and it became my favorite investment. It's also kind of kid related. It teaches children coding and other scientific topics. So my background is in science. I have a PhD from UCLA, and that's my old stomping grounds. And as I invested more and more in Digital Dream Labs, I really fell in love with the business and the business model. So I'm essentially the person in charge now. I'm the largest shareholder and CEO of the company. And that's kind of my day job, if you will. I work on that pretty much. And then we have a team of designers and artists who make video games that are educational. And I really enjoy that business. And then Klavon's, a lot of attention goes to it in the summer. That's when we're the least busiest at Digital Dream Labs because school is out. And then I focus on my attention there and at Klavon's, and then switch my attention back in the fall back to Digital Dream Labs. So that's kind of how that cycle works for both of those businesses.
Hey, Jacob, let me ask you a question there, because obviously one is sort of a high-tech educational business. The other one is more sort of a consumer, ice cream business. And I know at one point you were also involved, and your family was also involved with a coal mine, which is sort of, to me, extractive, hardcore industry. So you obviously have a big spread of experiences in very different industries. And then one of the things that caught my attention about your profile too is you're highly educated, like you said, a PhD from UCLA. I know you also have an MBA from Carnegie Mellon. So having that level of education, did it help you with these businesses, and especially the ones that are sort of more consumer, sort of old school? Or did it hinder you because it maybe limited your thought processes in some way, or is it don't care? And if somebody ultimately has their heart in being an entrepreneur, would you recommend that it's good to spend, 6-8 years going to school to then become an entrepreneur, or just kind of jump into it as soon as possible?
Those are all really awesome questions. The
route, sorry, so many.
No, because I've wrestled with that myself, and I've also just seen it in action in the marketplace. I think if you're a hardcore entrepreneur and you see someone with a PhD, that's a strike against them. It's been an experience in, we're in the ed tech space. And if I find someone with a PhD, they have this thing I term, analysis paralysis. They will talk something to death and never make a decision. And the worst thing you can ever do in business, or really in anything, I think, is just, avoid making a decision. Even if you make a bad decision, at least you made a decision. So I think there's an emphasis that if you are, like, to me, I never considered myself a hardcore academic. I got a PhD because I thought, oh, I'm going to eventually go into industry for pharma, or I'm going to go and patent, a compound, and then we're going to take that to market. So when I was working on my PhD, I already had a very entrepreneurial mindset. I was thinking, okay, we'll do the research. Once we do this research, the PhD gives me legitimacy. That PhD then I can use as a marketing tool, and I use that in Digital Dream Labs. I have legitimacy because I understand the brain more than your typical entrepreneur who's designing video games that teach kids, right? So that I can use as leverage to say, hey, I actually know what I'm doing. But that's kind of niche, and that kind of happened by accident. Because I kind of got sucked into Digital Dream Labs and eventually became the boss, right? So the thing I like about being an entrepreneur better than, or let's say, writing a grant and being strictly a researcher, is that I have to pull from many facets of my personality and my brain. I exercise both parts of my brain constantly. Mm-hmm. I have to be creative. I have to reach out with customer service. But the one thing we can say, like, okay, yeah, I have experience in different industries. It always comes down to the customer, right? No, I don't care if you're an attorney, a doctor, a CPA, an entrepreneur, whatever. Everything you do is built upon someone wanting to pay you for it, and you have to be good at it, and you have to be better than most people, and that is the commonality in all businesses, is our customers. And you have to convince that person that whatever you're doing is valuable enough for them to spend their hard-earned money to give to you for whatever service you're providing. So that's kind of where everything, in my opinion, unite. And then, yeah, there's differences in management, and there are different techniques and styles that are used in every industry, but it all boils down to the customer and what they're paying you.
Yeah, I want to add what you said, because I've had the experience, and I'm putting the word experience in quotes, of working with many PhDs and some in the extended family. And some, there are few that I know are really good entrepreneurs. One was part of a team that developed laser surgery on the eyes, and that was a nice ride. But many times when I'm sitting on a deal, and I help bring financing to a deal, or I'm looking at it to see if it is a good deal, one of the things that I see is that the unwillingness to take the risk, you call paralysis, analysis paralysis, and because I have it'll be real blunt, because I have the PhD, because I'm with Carnegie Tech or Carnegie Mellon or whatever, I shouldn't have to pledge what I have to pledge. Well, you don't come to the table, folks, unless you are really willing to put your money in, put some skin in the game. Right. And often when I'm on a committee or I'm on analysis, I'm the one saying, I don't care what degree, I don't care if they want the Nobel Prize, unless they're willing to put that on the table, count me out. So I like what you have to say. I knew there was a reason I liked you besides ice cream.
Well, so you said it perfectly. Like, I look for two things when I invest, because I occasionally angel invest. And two major things that outweigh everything: skin in the game, adults on board. Like, adults on board, that is so important. Just from a perspective of, this isn't your first rodeo. Am I actually subsidizing your education? And I've seen so many companies where they spend a lot of time trying to educate people, or educate themselves, their staff, and what have you, and it's all essentially wasted money from the investor's standpoint, because they have all these funds, and then they say, well, this didn't work, this didn't work, this didn't work, this didn't work. Whereas an old hand, salty dog, right, would have never wasted that money in the first place. So yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Skin in the game, adults on board, because when you, like I have skin in the game, I have $700,000 in Digital Dream Labs. You can be sure, yeah, you can be sure I'm going to be making the appropriate decisions on a day-to-day basis because that's my money at risk. This idea that the term that I hate more than anything from my colleagues or when I hear a pitch, sweat equity. Give me a break. Your whole job is to sweat, and that's not worth anything until you actually start generating revenue. Yeah, your sweat's worthless, and so that's the thing I think a lot of entrepreneurs have missed is that you have to go a year or two or three without paying yourself or whatever to prove that there's a market, to prove what you're doing, and then you reap the rewards afterwards, right? So, yeah. Anyway, I could again. There's I know you have a limited time with this show, but I could talk about some of this stuff for decades. I just feel
Okay,
like
wait, Jacob. So let me ask you a question.
Stuff off my chest.
When you're in your role as angel investor and somebody is going to pitch you, so okay, you're looking for skin in the game, you're looking for adults in the room, and maybe you have a hot button in terms of not saying anything about sweat equity or whatever, recognizing that goes with the territory.
Sure.
But is there a third thing you look for in a pitch, or in addition to that, anything else you look for in a pitch, or anything else that's a deal breaker?
So the thing I really like, and this kind of gets back to the PhD/engineer mindset versus the CEO mindset. What are your sales like, and are you a good salesperson? Some of the best deals that I'm in right now, their sales are really strong. And the CEO is a hustler. Like if the CEO is trying to hustle me and get me to buy something, then I'm thinking this is great. Because if he's trying to hustle me, then he's hustling he or she's trying to hustle every other person. And that means revenue, that means growth of the company, that means return. So I would say that sales. I don't care. And I've learned this firsthand. So our product at Digital Dream Labs is a superior product. It's outstanding. But a lot of our competitors have superior marketing. And guess what? Their crappy product is beating us simply because they have better marketing and they have better salespeople and they have had more market penetration. So I will take superior marketing and sales over a superior product any day, simply because that's been my first-hand experience.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's true. Is that the marketing is that's the engine that drives what's going on. And I have seen that a lot. I happen to like marketing. I like to talk. I like to sell. And that's good. My business partner, who unfortunately recently passed, who was more the analytical and brilliant man, but anytime, hey, send her out in the field, let her go, and we'll produce what she just sold, So.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you need to. So the ideal CEO is not in the middle of the circle. He or she is on the outside, interfacing with the company. I spend most of my time out in the field. I'm in the office very rarely because the input that we're getting from the customers in order to change the device or whatever we're working on, or the feedback we're getting to make the game, that's going to be critical for whenever we sell it. Otherwise, we're going to make something that they're not going to buy. So I see my job as not only salesperson, but also kind of like feedback for R&D, so that way we can improve our product to eventually take it to market. Right now we're working on a chemistry game. And so here was my first idea that we were going to have with the chemistry game. So we have a product called Puzzlets. It's hardware. You put little puzzle pieces in it. And you can make little molecules. You could put like an oxygen and a hydrogen next to it, and that would make your water molecule, right? And then this thing syncs with an iPad, so you can use your water molecule to do various things. So that was our idea that we had when we were drawing it up on the whiteboard inside Digital Dream Labs. Then I took it to teachers out in the field, some of our customers, and I said, okay, what do you think of this idea? And they said, this is terrible. First of all, we're not teaching chemistry this young to kids. You're wrong. So you need to do it for middle school. and then maybe a little bit of high school. And if you're going to be in middle school, don't use your product Puzzlets because no one's going to buy it. They see it already. Your product is being for little kids. And by the time we're in middle school, we're not using tangibles anyway, and we're using Google Chrome. So we don't want to use your product with Google Chromebooks, the Chromebooks we have. We just don't want to. So I got this feedback, and this was reaffirmed several times. Went to conferences, talked to our customers, went all over the place, many data points. And then I went back and told the team, okay, number one, this will not be a product that we're making with a platform Puzzlets. We're going to design it on WebGL, which essentially means it can be on any platform. They'll just run like a web app on a phone or Google Chrome. We're going to make it specifically for Google Chrome and maybe even give them exclusivity, because Chromebooks now make up 78% of the middle school market. So we're going to fight that? Are you crazy? So we're going to expand that presence, and then we also made it our game a little bit more mature looking. So there's a couple video games that are out there. There's one called Binding of Isaac, and it's pretty bloody and gory. So we can't do that in school, obviously, but we can tone it down and have the same feel, where kids don't feel like they're a baby playing this video game. Like, oh, okay, I'm a hip, cool 13-year-old learning chemistry on this video game. All right, now we have something. So that took about 3 months. And so we'll release this game in March, and I know it'll be a hit because we took all that feedback in. Had we not done that, it would fall flat on its face, and then we would be wondering what we did wrong, and it'd be too late. So,
Now,
anyway,
can I ask a quick question there?
Yeah.
Is part of your plan to maybe try to establish a baseline before they use the game, and then let them use the game, and then establish sort of a follow-up to be able to say, hey, look, students that didn't use the game, learned this much chemistry. Students that did use the game learned this much more chemistry, or how do you? I mean, I know you're an analytical guy, so I'm thinking that you're thinking about how to establish the effectiveness of this.
Right. So the pitch is to the teacher is, this is going to make your life easier, number one. But number two, there's an ROI. And the ROI is that your student's going to perform better had they not played with this product. And so there's a lot of longitudinal studies we're examining. There's a thing called the Institute of Educational Studies, the IES, and that's a division inside the Department of Education. So we're writing grants and trying to come up with a 5-year study to show that, okay, if you've played with our product, let's say you played with our coding game, Cork the Volcano, or if you play with our math game, or you play with our art game called Swatch Out, that 5 years later you're better off. That you as a student, you've learned more basic stuff, you absorbed it more quickly, and you're better off. What we've done with smaller studies is do pre and post assessment. So we'll do a pre-assessment. Okay, here are these various topics that the state standards want you to master. How well do you master it before or after playing our game? And it's always like, about 25% increase versus control. So by playing with our products, or by using our products as supplemental or even just core curriculum, you are making your student better off than they had been before. And that's really the return on investment the teacher's getting. So with the chemistry game, we're following the U.S. standards. So we first design the game around a curriculum. We find out, okay, what's the curriculum? What are the teachers trying to teach? And then how do we, quote unquote, scaffold that? That's another buzz term I hate. But it's like, how do we scaffold? How do we move this into and make it educationally rewarding, but at the same time don't make it dry and dreary like a virtual test? So we have these various curricula. We'll have the teachers play with it with their students, and they'll do pre and post assessments. Because the way the school year breaks into semesters, you can have one class that's just not using it, right? You can test them, and then you can have another class that is, and then you can flip-flop them later in the year, right? So that way everyone gets a chance to play with the game. And that's what we'll do when we release the game, which will probably be around spring break next year. That's what a lot of teachers will start doing. They'll take this game and they'll put it into their rotation in their curriculum, and then they'll see the outcome of that. And so we follow that very closely.
Jacob, I want to ask something. This is um, because of my interest in education. One of the things that I've often seen is a disparity within school districts about what quality of instruction and quality of material, access to good educational material. And I'm thinking, as a mother and as someone who's taught, this type of instruction could be what I would call an education equalizer
Mhm. Yeah,
for you know
I'm sorry.
for to well in the country. I mean, if you're out in the rural areas, it's appalling sometimes the quality of instruction. And I know I'm going to get in trouble, but I've been there. I know what's going on. So I was just fascinated with what you're saying.
Well, and it gets political. We sell in we have sales in every state.
Mm.
And so Florida, for example, the way they elect their school board is it's countywide, and there are only 3 school board members. So decisions are made a lot quicker. However, you have to be bigger in order to really be able to, let's say, get sales in that district. Pennsylvania, on the other hand, there's usually 9 members on the school board, and there are in Allegheny County alone there are 47 different school districts. Now we're in
Yeah,
every single
it's
one.
overwhelming.
Yeah, and so our customers break into 3 facets. There's the well-funded school district, let's say like Mount Lebanon, for example.
Right.
Well-funded school district, kind of a middle-of-the-road school district that, let's say, but it's really on the cutting edge. And that could be a lot of different school districts. And then there are underfunded school districts, or
Right.
like you say, rural districts, or like districts that are surrounded by the federal forests that are upstate, right? I mean, they have no tax base, so they can't really even hire people. So there are solutions that we have made to meet each one of these difficulties. So we work with AIU3. So it's a lending library. It's called the Allegheny Intermediate Unit. And
Yes.
so in Pennsylvania, the intermediate unit is kind of your lending library. It's called an ABOSI in New York, and then in most other states, it's called an ESA, an Educational Support Administration or Association. So we sell to IUs, BOSIs, and ESAs. They buy it, and then they lend it to these schools that don't necessarily have the funds. We
Mm-hmm.
also will help write grants so that these schools that are lacking funds can actually get these materials. One school district in particular, one of my best customers in Texas, they have a law firm that strokes the check. I deal directly with the law firm. They pay me directly, and then they give it to that school district.
Wow.
So there's you have to be kind of nimble a little bit in these areas. And then there's Arkansas. So Arkansas apparently had some sort of inferiority complex and decided, you know what, we're going to make this huge pot of money. And the state appropriated and earmarked tons and tons of state money that is just for tech in the classroom. And so one of my best accounts statewide is Arkansas, because there is a huge state budget, and they don't even ask me. They'll just buy anything. And so, okay, here you go. So it really depends on the political system you're dealing with. And then if the school is underfunded, like you're mentioning, there are ways to get funding to them so they can use our product, and then everyone benefits, right? So that's what we're really focused on. Is the same inside Digital Dream Labs is a fun introduction to any topic for every child, an emphasis on every child. And we really go out of our way to make certain that finances for a school are not a limiting factor to buying our technology.
Oh, I like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask. Okay, when I was here, because I've done product development, I'm the one that funded it and drove everybody crazy doing it. But when you look at developing an educational game, what is your time frame?
Well, so we try to make 2 games a year. That's kind of the pace. It depends on what kind of game too. So and this is also something that we learned kind of the hard way. So Cork the Volcano, which is our coding game, it has 120 levels. Very nice game, very polished, very slick. People don't appreciate it nearly as much as we do. so we over-designed that game. We spent way too much time and money making that game. Okay, so we learned our lesson there. So what we've done subsequently is we pared it down, and then if you want something a little bit better, so more, let's say, sophisticated, you can do an additional download. So we have a math game called Abacus Finch, and then we have an art game called Swatch Out. And those teach the very basics of math and color theory. And so that gets you K through 2, basically. So you start at kindergarten, and by the time you're in second grade, you've completed our curriculum. Those games are smaller and a lot more nimble and a lot more appreciated, both from us and customers, because they are not so long and kind of address the topic and then you're done. And that's what we're really looking for. What we're looking forward to releasing. We call it Monstrous Molecules. That's the working title of our chemistry game, Monstrous Molecules. So you're going to learn how electrons work, how hydrogen bonding works, the reason why water expands when it freezes versus other things that when they freeze they usually shrink. Things like that. Those principles, put those in place, have the fun with the level, and then move on to the next topic without beating it to death. Our first Cork the Volcano, like, okay, I get it. All right, these commands are teaching me coding. Okay, great. Usually that sinks in like level 4, and okay, we probably should have done some other things. So, but that's really what we're trying to do, is get the coalesce or distill the absolute essence of what the student and teacher need to master, and then okay, let's move on to the next topic.
Hey, Jacob, let me ask you a question there, and I'm also interested because, again, of your background and science and how the brain works. Um, so understanding that your games are educational, so they have that inherent benefit. But I know in the news there's a lot of talk about a lot of gamification and behavioral science being embedded into these games to get like just people to keep playing and playing and playing to try to move up the levels, and is it an addiction, is it not an addiction? So my question to you is, are you embedding any of these concepts in your games, again, maybe for a good cause, and if you are, how do you feel about that, and is there somewhere that maybe a line should be drawn?
Right. Okay, so we're going to get into another term that I hate. I hate the term gamification.
Okay.
Yeah, well, but here's the thing. Here's the reason why I hate gamification. And I didn't maybe 5 years ago, but now I do. And gamification is thrown at me. Someone will come. Okay, sometimes we'll consult, right? And someone will come with an app that sucks. I mean, it's a terrible app. It shouldn't have been developed, and I don't have the heart to tell them that they wasted $250,000. They probably need to start over. So they'll come and they say, okay, can you gamify this? I want you to gamify, like. So what has happened, I see in the marketplace, is that you have a crappy app, and then you think that, adding 3 stars if you beat a level, now all of a sudden your crappy app isn't crappy anymore. And I'm sorry, it just doesn't work that way. So gamifying something, so we build games, and they are inherently educational. We're not doing something educational and gamifying it. So that separates us from all of our competitors. Our competitors right now, you'll go on. I'll give you a classic example. You're on a racetrack. You're going around the racetrack, all right? And you're about to hit the finish line. And then it stops you in your tracks and says, okay, what's 1 + 1? 2. Okay, now you can keep playing the game. Here, keep having fun, kid. But don't stop playing, or else otherwise they're going to keep giving you these virtual tests. So that's a very clear example of gamification. It takes you out of your experience. You're forced to do something that someone else thought was fun, and so that you'll keep interacting with the app. What we do is we build a game, and then the learning's incidental. And the analogy I'll use is Flintstone vitamins. When Flintstone vitamins were first being developed, they candy coated them. And what was happening is the kids were licking off the candy and spitting out the vitamin.
Oh, yeah.
I had a dog that did that.
Yeah. And so they reformulated it and they figured, okay, we're going to put the sugar through the entire thing now. So it's infused. So you have to, if you want the candy, you have to eat the whole thing. And that's kind of how I look at game design. It's infused the whole way, but we focus on the games first, and then the fun is up front, and then the learning just kind of happens, and you don't realize it, and the child doesn't realize it. So I would say that's the pure version. Okay, that's the quote unquote Nintendo model. If you want to get into the really dark, ugly stuff like the Fortnites of the world, or what we call grinders, or the in-app purchases, it's essentially, I consider that the dark web. It's really bad. We expect you to pay a price, and that's it. There's not, and that's all you do. You pay it once, and you get what you pay for. These other models, which have been very, very clever and are, I think, sadistic, where you have games and gaming companies, and you'll go to these game conferences, and the CEOs will get up there and they'll say, look at this. We were able to do this. We got this revenue here. You got these in-app purchases there. And it used to be you'd buy a game console, let's say $200, and you'd buy a game for $50, and that you were done. Now with these various mobile games, you could spend thousands of dollars and actually have nothing to show for it either. And so we try to separate ourselves from being associated with that kind of stuff. Now, investors love it. See, that's the issue. That's why there's so many games out there like it, because the investors, they want to see the quick return. They want their return, and then they're hoping that you get a good hit, and then if you hit big, then you're set. Everybody wants another Angry Birds 2.0, and it just I think that's a bad philosophy. I think what we try to do in Digital Dream Labs is, okay, we're going to make something really good, and people will see that it's really good, and then we'll make money because it's really good, not because we've tricked them into thinking it might be good and now they're hooked. So there are tons of studies that show that when you're playing, like tapping, even the act of tapping on your phone releases dopamine. It is very drug-like. Screen time definitely enhances neurochemicals in your brain that give it kind of like an intoxication. And then people, when they leave technology, they experience symptoms of withdrawal. And we just have to be very careful where we are on the spectrum so that we're not like those quote unquote evildoers, those people who I try to not associate with. So
I'm going to add something, because I have been a former counselor, and my position has been, and still occasionally are involved, my position is we're creating a world where we had better start really looking at what subliminally we are teaching. And that having worked with Gamblers Anonymous and AA and stuff like that, what you're doing is creating a culture that's based on addiction to violence, addiction to activity that is non-productive. And somewhere along the way, which I don't want to see, but what's going to happen is some kind of enforced standards, because we're so interested in the bottom line that we're forgetting that the kid that's being trained today is going to end up being that problem tomorrow. And I've been there, I know that, and I've seen that, and I like what you're saying, and that's worth a whole discussion along the way too. I did want to ask you, since this is a business show, and we are, we could talk forever. Of the two businesses, now you vacillate between, you not vacillate, but you go between two of them. Which is the one that, I wouldn't say the easier, but is the one that is, for the average person, more able to grasp and understand what's going on? DreamWorks or Klavon's?
That's a really good question. They're very different, and there are different types of highs and lows associated with each. When I was first meeting you guys, I was telling you the story at Klavon's where we had 5 years of pictures, there was an infant, and then the infant is a now 1-year-old, and he has a little brother. Now the little brother's grown up, so now he's 2 years old, and then it shows them growing up the whole way to kindergarten at Klavon's, and the tradition has been born with this family, and they sent me the 5 years of going to the shop. Very rewarding. Hard to put money associated with that kind of thing. And I see a lot of that every day. So it's very, let's say, spiritually rewarding work that we do at Klavon's. And I would say it's a little bit more gratifying faster, simply because we have thousands of people coming in that you see face to face. So I would say the average person walking off the street would really like Klavon's right away and would say, you know what, I'm going to stay here for the rest of my life. This is my calling. I could see that happen pretty quick. With Digital Dream Labs, we're right now we're still in production, and we're grinding out this game. And yeah, we have sales and stuff like that, but the gratification of the kids, like I'll go to school and they say, hey, there's the Puzzlets guy, yay, and everyone's happy, and that's nice. But I don't go down to Texas, or I don't go all the way over to where we have some of our customers in Silicon Valley, etc. I don't see that, right? They're so far away, and they're not coming to our office. It was actually really great. We had one teacher who was having a technical issue, and I just said, look, you're local, just pop on by, and we'll upgrade your board for you. Just why don't you just stop on by? And she brought her son, who just loves us. I mean, he was such a fan, and that was great. But that has happened once in 5 years. So that doesn't happen very often. So to see the product of your work and to feel that your work's getting rewarded, and I think that's a driving force at Klavon's, and that's more gratification sooner than Digital Dream Labs, which requires a different kind of discipline. And again, we're getting back to this. We're talking about games and stuff like that. The culture of instant gratification, which is an issue, but from a business that can be addicting too, right? So the long-term picture of Digital Dream Labs is that it'll be a bigger company, much more profitable, and a bigger size than Klavon's probably ever will be as a brick and mortar. But it's very easy to focus on Klavon's because of how good it makes you feel. And how good it makes other people feel too. So there's a balance that I have to strike between the two.
Hey, Jacob, and I know we're getting very close to wrapping up here, and this has been incredibly interesting. But so we've talked a lot about the businesses, the companies, sort of the market facing aspects of it. I do want to ask you a question on employees, because that is something that a lot of small business owners struggle with, and it's a big challenge. And it goes back to when you and I were talking about a couple days ago, and don't quote me on these exact numbers, you can bring them up again, but I know that at Klavon's the turnover was much higher than at the coal mine. So my question is that because of the industry? Is that because of the types of people that choose to work in those two different businesses? Is that because of pay scales? Is that a generational issue? What variables do you, and I remember it was like night and day. What variables or factors do you attribute those huge differences? And is there something that can be done?
Yeah, so for the listeners at home, Sal is citing a previous life of mine, a previous chapter where I worked with a family coal business, and then we sold it back in 2012, 2013, and then I kind of moved on. And then I bought myself a job at Digital Dream Labs, basically. And at River Hill, the company's called River Hill Coal Company, there was about 158 employees, and the average tenure was 30 years, plus or minus. At Klavon's, I have gone through more than 158 people by now, and the average tenure is 6 months. So we have, and we have maybe a crew of 3 or 4 who've now been with me for 4 or 5 years that I can actually inherently trust. But it took a long time to get there. So to answer your question, so at Digital Dream Labs, I see something kind of in the middle of the road. And so to answer your question, I think it's three different. I'm going to answer it in three facets. The first thing is that the younger generation, they really want the instant gratification. They really want it faster. They want to see success, and they want to see it now. They're not willing to put in the hours, for sure. And I'm seeing that everywhere. The other thing is over involvement of the parents. I've had some parents come in with the interview. I've had some parents call me to set up the interview. I've had some parents chew me out after I fire said employee. So, but it's so common now. It's so common.
And that is right.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so there's a little bit I see that happening, which is eroding. So there's this instant gratification, this inability to stand up for yourself. And there's also this kind of smugness, smarminess that's coming that I kind of blame California for, that you're not really transparent in your communications, where someone is very nice to you up front, but then very vindictive behind your back, right in your own office or right in your own place without being very communicative. So what the old tricks I've done is just hire slow. Everyone's initially on a probation period. Just be very slow. So at Klavon's, our probation period is 2 months before we're even really offering you employment. It's almost like you're an intern. I do the same thing at Digital Dream Labs, an extended internship. And I make certain that we have an employment agreement up front, and I'm very clear that Pennsylvania is an at-will state. And when I fire someone, I fire them, and I don't give them a reason. I give them a termination letter that has, the saying that Pennsylvania's an at-will state, and you're being terminated for no cause, to make absolutely certain that it's final. I think you just have to be very, very, you have to put on guardrails more now than ever, and really try to coach and mentor this newer generation, but at the same time give them a lot of tough love, because obviously they didn't get enough of it at home. Like, they didn't learn how to be adults. There's a failed parenting practice where they were not told how to be adults at home, and now they need to grow up. And that's kind of fallen upon the employer, unfortunately. And I'm seeing that a lot more. So if I had ever lectured any one of our welders or anyone at River Hill, if I had ever said anything derogatory, they would have set their tools down and they would have walked away and gotten a new job like that. I mean, there was nothing I could have done to reverse that. So I always had to be very respectful about someone's skills and about their skill set. Now I have to turn around. Sometimes they have no skill set. And how do you work with that? So it's complicated. So I'd say it's part of it's generational, a little bit of it's industry, but a lot of it is just the attitudes that Americans have towards work right now. I think that people are used to now working at a computer versus actually doing stuff with their hands.
American to group therapy. Mine, I put them into a boot camp. Yeah. And as soon as someone came in with a parent, that would be goodbye. I don't want even.
No, that's instantly. If I say goodbye, no, the people who I really like and I like to hire are the ones who are like gum on my shoe. Let's say I'll tell you, look, you're not qualified, you don't have it, but I want it. Okay, I'll intern for you. I'll stay. We had this one guy who started as an intern. He's working with us now. He wasn't very qualified, didn't have really the right skills, but was willing to come and work for practically nothing, and now he's really good. So I look for that tenacity. The other question I ask at a good screening question I ask at Klavon's is, what is the hardest thing you've ever done? And if the hardest thing you've ever done is get an A+ on some course, you're not coming to work for me. Some of the best answers I've ever heard is, well, picking watermelons in South Carolina. That guy was awesome.
Pretty smart kid any day.
Yeah, so I would say, like, so that guy worked for us for 3 years, and he knows what hard work is. And that's just it. What's the hardest thing you've ever done? And if they can give me a really good answer to that, that's usually how I base my hiring decisions
We got a good book together, the three. I'm fascinated, Jacob. I got to talk to you more.
now. Okay.
Um, okay, we have, Sal, we've really gone.
Yes, we've
How about you,
officially reached the 1 hour mark.
I know. How about you giving a brief commercial about who you are and how to get in contact with you? And same thing with you, but let's go with Sal first.
Okay, thank you, JoAnn. So, Sal Acosta, I'm a business broker. I help people buy and sell businesses, very similar to Klavon's or any Main Street business that's out there. Restaurant, bar, small car dealership, retail store, small factory. In terms of getting in contact with me, it's very simple. You can call me right on my personal cell phone. It's area code 484-358-9470. Again, 484-358-9470 goes right to my cell phone. And if you want to email me, it's Sal, S-A-L 459 at yahoo.com. Again, Sal, S-A-L 459 at yahoo.com. Same thing, goes straight to me.
Jacob, give a plug to whatever business you want to.
Sure. Well, since you love Klavon so much, we'll talk about ice cream. So, same thing. You can reach me directly, any of our customers, or if you have questions about Klavon's, it's my personal email, hjh122. So it's Harry Jacob Hanchar 122 at gmail.com, and happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
And it's a great place to go. It really is. This is JoAnn Forrester, the Empress of Biz. What we do basically is help people start and grow their businesses, and I emphasize the word safely. You want to get a hold of me? Telephone number is 412-440-6969, and check us out on Facebook, Empress of Biz. Listen, learn, prosper. Email is Empress, EMPRESS of OF biz at gmail.com. Gentlemen, I have really enjoyed this talk. Jacob, you're fascinating.
No, thanks for having me.
You got your own test model, your own family for the ice cream and the game.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Thank you so much, and what an interesting time. Thank you, Sal. As always, you bring fascinating guests.
Thank you. And thank you, Jacob, for being our guest.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.